The Suffering. The Suffering takes place in a prison where nightmares become reality. At its core is Torque, a man convicted of murdering his family, though he has no memory of the crime. When he arrives at Abbott State Penitentiary, the prison suddenly transforms into a living hell. The walls of this century-old prison hold dark secrets, and the island itself seems to feed on human misery. The inmates' worst fears manifest as grotesque creatures, physical embodiments of execution methods used throughout the prison's history. These monsters hunt the living, their twisted forms reflecting the violence and cruelty that created them. As Torque fights to survive, he discovers he can transform into a monster himself, becoming the very thing he fears. The line between victim and tormentor blurs. Every choice matters, shaping not just Torque's fate, but his very soul. In this universe, the real horror isn't the monsters, but the question hanging over everything. What if the greatest monster is the one inside you? What if your guilt is justified? This is a world where redemption is possible but never guaranteed, and the price of truth is paid in blood. Promised Neverland. Promised Neverland exists in a world of perfect illusion. On the surface, it's a story about orphans living in an idyllic home called Grace Fieldhouse. They are well-fed, well-educated, and deeply loved by their caretaker, whom they call Mother. But beneath this facade lies a horrifying truth. These children are not orphans. They are livestock. The world outside their orphanage is ruled by demons who farm humans for their brains, considered a delicacy. The more intelligent the child, the more valuable the harvest. Their entire existence is a careful cultivation, their happiness engineered to produce the perfect product. Their mother isn't their protector. She's their farmer, preparing them for slaughter. When the oldest children, Emma, Norman, and Ray, discover their fate, they face an impossible choice: escape and risk everything, or remain in their false paradise until their time comes. This is a universe where childhood innocence crashes against brutal reality, where the adults meant to protect children are complicit in their destruction. There are no monsters hiding under the bed. The monsters sit at the head of the table, checking your test scores, tucking you in at night, and deciding when you're ripe for harvest. Darkwood. Darkwood takes place in a forest that defies natural law, expanding endlessly, consuming villages, and trapping those within its boundaries. Set in Soviet-era Poland, the forest appeared suddenly, cutting off a region from the outside world. By day, the protagonist scavenges through decaying buildings and overgrown paths, collecting resources while piecing together fragments of a story no one fully remembers. But when night falls, the true horror emerges. Darkness in Darkwood isn't merely the absence of light. It's an active force. The shadows breathe, shift, and hunger. From dusk till dawn, the protagonist must barricade inside whatever shelter they've found, using scavenged wood to board windows, setting traps, and pointing their unreliable flashlight at every sound. What makes this universe uniquely terrifying is its commitment to disorientation. The map changes subtly each day. Characters speak in riddles and half-truths. Every item, from a child's journal to a broken violin, hints at horrors just beyond comprehension. The protagonist's own body becomes suspect as strange growths appear, vision distorts, and unfamiliar abilities emerge. This is a universe where transformation isn't a single dramatic event, but a slow, inevitable corruption, a fungal spread of the forest's essence into everything it touches. Characters cling to rituals and superstitions that may be meaningless, or may be the only thing keeping them human. In Darkwood, the greatest horror isn't death, but survival, as each day blurs the line between the forest and those trapped within it. This is a world where sanity is a luxury that dwindles with each sunset, and where the most terrifying realization isn't that monsters exist, but that you might have been one all along, just another organism absorbed into the forest's hungering consciousness. I Am Legend. I Am Legend unfolds. In a world where humanity's reach exceeded its grasp, a miracle cancer cure mutated into a virus that swept across the globe like wildfire. Those it didn't kill, it transformed into something no longer human. Creatures that hunt in darkness, that crave human flesh, that remember enough of their humanity to set traps but not enough to resist their new nature. In this graveyard of civilization stands Robert Neville, the last man in New York City. By day, he hunts for supplies, broadcasts radio messages into the void, and searches for a cure with increasingly desperate determination. By night, he barricades himself inside his fortified home while the infected howl outside. His only companion is a dog, the last thread connecting him to the world that was. Neville's days are structured around rigid routines, not just for survival, but to maintain his sanity in a world of overwhelming silence. What makes this universe truly haunting is not just its emptiness, but Neville's place within it. To the nocturnal creatures, he is the monster, the daylight predator who captures their kind for experiments. The legend they warn their young about. In his quest to restore humanity, Neville fails to see that a new form of society has already emerged from the ashes, one that views him not as a savior, but as the last remnant of a species whose time has passed. This is a world where salvation and damnation depend entirely on perspective, where the line between hero and villain exists only in the stories we tell ourselves. Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight takes place in a kingdom buried deep beneath the world, forgotten by time itself. Hollownest was once a thriving civilization of insects, ruled by a mysterious being known as the Pale King. But now it lies in ruins, its citizens driven mad, its glory reduced to crumbling architecture and fading memories. At the heart of this tragedy is a primal force called the Infection, a searing orange light that consumes minds from within. The Pale King, in his desperation to save his kingdom, committed an unspeakable act. He created thousands of children, vessels meant to contain this plague. These vessels were raised in complete darkness, forced to grow without thought, without will, without voice. Most were discarded, their broken bodies cast into an abyss. Only one was deemed hollow enough for the task, the Hollow Knight, sealed away as a living prison for the Infection. But the plan failed. Nothing can truly exist without a mind, without desire. Even the perfect vessel developed a small fracture in its purpose, and through that crack, the Infection began to seep back into the world. This is a universe where good intentions lead to child sacrifice, where civilization is built on suffering, where gods die but their consequences linger eternally. In Hallownest, greatness and ruin are forever intertwined, and even the smallest creatures must bear the weight of choices made by beings who thought themselves divine. Worm. Worm exists in a world where superheroes are real, but heroism is complicated. At its center is Taylor Hebert, a teenage girl who gains the power to control insects after suffering a traumatic bullying incident. She enters a society where people with powers, called parahumans, are divided into heroes and villains, with the lines between them blurring more each day. What makes this universe truly dark is not just the violence or destruction, but the broken systems behind them. The heroes are often cruel, self-serving, or manipulated by bureaucracy. The villains sometimes show more honor and compassion, and behind it all lurks a horrifying truth. The powers themselves come from alien entities called shards, fragments of vast creatures that attach to humans during moments of extreme trauma. These shards don't grant powers out of benevolence. They do it to gather data, to learn how their abilities function when wielded by creatures driven by conflict. As Taylor descends deeper into this world, first as a villain called Skitter, later as the anti-hero Weaver, she makes increasingly difficult choices. She compromises her morals to fight greater evils. She hurts people to save others. She becomes what she once feared. This is a universe where no victory comes without cost, where every solution creates new problems, where achieving peace might require becoming a monster. And as global threats emerge, the Endbringers who destroy cities, the Slaughterhouse Nine who torture for pleasure, and finally Golden Morning, an extinction-level event. The question becomes not whether humanity will survive, but what will remain of humanity's soul if it does. Snowpiercer. Snowpiercer exists in a world frozen by humanity's arrogance. After failed attempts to reverse global warming, Earth has become a wasteland of ice. The last survivors circle the globe on a perpetually moving train, a closed ecosystem where nothing is wasted, especially not human potential for cruelty. Inside this metal arc, a brutal hierarchy has developed. At the front of the train live the elites in luxury, enjoying fresh food, education, and space. But as you move backward through the cars, humanity deteriorates. The tail section houses the lowest class, people who eat protein bars made of crushed insects, who wear the same clothes until they rot, whose children are occasionally stolen for mysterious purposes. The train's creator, Wilford, has designed this system not from necessity, but from belief, a conviction that this rigid order is the natural state of humanity. Curtis Everett leads a revolution from the tail, fighting his way forward car by car. But with each bloody victory comes a more disturbing revelation. The rebellion itself may be part of the system's design, a pressure valve for discontent, a way to cull the population when necessary. This is a universe where escape is impossible, where revolution is anticipated, where even hope serves the machine. The engine eternal demands sacrifice, and in a closed system, the only meaningful resource is human life itself. The Book of Eli. The Book of Eli takes place in a world burned clean by nuclear fire. 30 years after the Flash, Earth is a wasteland of ash and hostility. Water is currency. Reading is a forgotten skill. Violence is the common language. Those who remember the world before carry that knowledge like a burden, watching as a new generation grows up knowing only brutality and scarcity. Through this desolation walks Eli, a solitary traveler heading west for reasons he keeps to himself. In his possession is the last known Bible, a book that has become both rare and dangerous. Some want it destroyed, blaming religion for the war that ended everything. Others, like the tyrant Carnegie, want to control it, recognizing its power to influence the desperate and shape a new society in his image. What elevates this universe beyond simple post-apocalyptic fantasy is its focus on narrative control. In a world stripped of infrastructure, of law, of shared history, stories become the most valuable resource. Those who control the stories control the future. Eli protects the Bible not out of simple religious devotion, but because he understands that rebuilding civilization requires more than water and weapons. It requires purpose, meaning, moral framework. This is a world where faith and manipulation are two sides of the same page, where preserving knowledge is both a sacred duty and a potentially catastrophic responsibility. And in the film's most revealing twist, we learn that true vision has nothing to do with eyes, and everything to do with what one chooses to see.
Subscribe for more interesting stuff. Tell us your experience in the comments.